Hello everybody, my name is Richmond and I welcome you back to the Rich Tech channel. Here in this channel, we talk about computer science related stuff, robotics and coding to be specific. So if you're a fan of these things and you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I would encourage you to subscribe and also turn on your notification bell so that you'll be the first to be notified when there is any new video released. Today, under structured program, we'll be talking about control structures, which is one of the most important things we need to know as computer science students or as programmers. So without wasting much time, we'll move into the tutorial. Okay guys, so control structures are the things we use in determining or controlling the flow of our program. Okay, so basically there are three types, or there are three things we'll be discussing under these control structures, which is the sequence, the decision making structures, and also the looping structures. With this particular tutorial, we will limit ourselves to the sequence and decision making structures. Okay, and in our next tutorial we'll talk about the looping. So first of all, talking about the sequence, is also known as the linear control structure. Okay, and it defines the order in which programs or statements in your programs are executed. Okay, so we've learned about the input and output statements. We've learned a whole lot about them, how to display things, and also how to receive input from the user. Okay, and with this sequence control structure, it just determines which particular statement runs first, or which particular statement is executed first by your program. Okay, so and there are some simple things we need to follow in order to achieve what we want, depending on which statement we want to be executed first. Okay, and with a sequence control structure, programs are executed from the top to the bottom. So that's one main thing you need to know about the sequence control structure. So if you have a whole lot of input and output statements in your program, you should put in mind that all the program or all the instructions are going to be executed from the top to the bottom. Okay, so take note of that. And also, where a line has more than one statement or instructions, the order of execution of the statement is from the left to the right. Okay, so for instance, we said that we can allow the user to input several values into different types of variables using just one input statement. Okay, so if you actually don't know that, then I suggest you go back and watch the video on the input and output statements, okay, to understand it better. So I'll leave the video link in the description below so that you go and take a look at that. Okay, so as we said, we can just allow the user to input different types of data into different variables using one input statement. Okay, where we said you will just separate the variables with commas. So for instance, input A, comma B, comma C. Okay, then that is going to allow you to receive values for the A, B, and C respectively. But here lies the case that using the sequence control structure, the code is going to be executed from the left to the right, which means that the code is going to allow the user to input a value for the A first, then it's going to allow the person to move on to the B, then to the C. Okay, so from the left to the right, let's take note of that. Okay, so basically these are the two main things you need to know about the sequence control structures. One is that the code runs from the top to the bottom, and then the other states that situations where you have several statements or instructions or commands on one line, the code is executed from the left to the right. So please take note of that. Moving on, we are going to talk about the decision making control structures. Okay, and with the decision making control structures, they are used when you want to choose between two or more alternatives based on a particular situation or a particular outcome. Okay, and under that we are going to talk about three separate types. The first one is the simple one, which is the simple if statement. The second one is the IfThen Else statement, and then the third one is the IfThen Else if statement. Okay, note that programming languages such as the C++ uses the switch statement. Okay, we will leave out this for now, and then we'll talk about that some other time. Okay, so let's talk about the first simple if statement. Okay, which is best used when there is only one course of action. Okay, so let's take note of that. And for the structure, or how we use it in structured programming, first of all, you write if condition is true, then the action that will be taken is under the if, then you end the whole if with the end if statement. Okay, so the first line is the condition, the second line is containing the action that you want to be carried out when the condition is true, and then the last statement is for ending that particular if statement. So let's take note of that. So this is an example over here. If a greater than 0, then a equals a divided by 2, b equals b times 2. Okay, then end if. Okay, so basically another thing you need to know about the if, or the simple if statements, is that whenever the condition is true, it runs everything in the if statement. Okay, and when the condition is not true, which means it's false, in that case it doesn't run anything, and then it just move on to the end if. And if there is any other code after the end if, it will move on to that one. Okay, so here we are using the if a is greater than 0. Okay, so that means there is going to be a value in the a, and in this case a is a variable which we can classify it as an operand. In this case, in one of our tutorials where we spoke about operators, we also made mention of operands, and we said that they could be variables, they could be expressions, and so on and so forth. Okay, and we also said operators are always in between operands. So in this case, the a and 0 becomes the operands, and then the greater than sign in between it becomes the operator. Okay, and we can clearly identify the greater than sign under the relational or comparison operators. Okay, so if you also missed the tutorial on the operators, I will also leave that one, the link to that particular video, in the description below, so that you move to that and get the understanding. Okay, so let's try and make sense out of this particular example. So we are saying if a is greater than 0, then a equals a divided by 2, b equals b times 2. So if the a greater than 0 is true, that is when these two instructions are going to be executed. But then if it's not true and it's false, then we are going to move to the end if, and the if statement is going to be terminated. Okay, so that is what this particular statement actually means. Okay, also still under the simple if statement, this particular things are explaining the the previous example. Okay, so the first thing is a check to see if the current value of a is greater than 0 is done. Okay, so that is the first thing the code executes. Okay, so it checks to see if a is greater than 0. And the first situation is, if indeed the a is greater than 0, then that means the condition is true. Then the statement that follows are executed. That is, you divide a by 2, and then you assign it to the a value. Okay, and then you multiply the b also by 2, and then you assign the result to the b value, or the b variable. Okay, the last thing is, if the condition is not true, then your two statements won't be executed. Okay, it will just end the if statement. So basically, I hope you understand the first type of decision statement. Okay, so the next type of statement we'll be talking about under the decision statement is the if then else statement. If then else statement. Okay, and basically with the if then else statement, you actually have two alternatives to choose from. You give the program two alternatives to choose from. Okay, so if the first alternative is false, then it obviously runs or does the second alternative. Let's take note of that. So for instance, if you have someone and you send the person that, okay, go to the market. If you get rice, buy it. If you don't get rice, buy any other food stuff. Okay, so you've actually given the person two choices, which is in order. Okay, so the reason why I'm saying it's in order is because the person has to check for rice first. Okay, so you check for the rice. If there is rice, you buy it. If there is no rice, then you move ahead, you buy anything else. Okay, so that is it. And let's see the structure of the if then else statement. Okay, so if the condition is true, then take the course of action. Okay, else you take the second course of action, or you take this other course of action. Okay, so let's take note of that, and then after that we end the if. Let's explain that with an example. Okay, so we have here, if gender equals male, then print the student is a male, else print the student is a female. Okay, so this actually makes sense. And in this particular example, we've used so many things we've talked about since we started this structured programming course. Okay, we are using an operator, which is the relational or comparison operator for the condition. Okay, and then we are also using the output statement. Okay, so if you haven't watched the video where we spoke about operators, and also you haven't watched the video where we discuss the input and output statement, things like this will be really difficult for you to understand, because where we've got into, we are combining some of these things that we've already spoke about on this channel. So I'll advise you, if you haven't taking some of the videos, you can actually go back. The videos are really short and understandable. You can just watch them before you get back, so that the understanding will be there better. Okay, so let's move on. So we can see here that the condition is that if the gender is male, then we print on the screen using an output statement that the student is a male. Else, if the gender is not a male, then obviously it's a female. So we also print on the screen using the output statement, print the student is a female. Okay, so as simple as that. So these things actually explains the example we have here. So let's read a couple of them. Okay, so it states here that if the variable gender contains male, then the relation expression sex equals male is true. Hence, the statement the student is a male will be displayed. Okay, so that is for the first part, which is if gender equals male, then print the student is a male. So if the gender is male, that means the condition is true, then it's going to display the student is a male. Okay, and if the variable gender does not contain male, then the student cannot be a male, hence the student is a female is displayed. Okay, and this is because the condition then becomes false. Okay, so it will move on to the else, and then perform the action in the else statement. So we are going to talk about the last statements under the decision statements. Okay, which is the if then else if statement. Okay, so take note of that. It's a little bit like the previous statement. Okay, so let's look at some of the things this particular statement does. Okay, so this statement is best used when the alternatives are more than two. Okay, and we realize that the previous statement is when the alternatives are exactly 2. Okay, the course of actions are exactly 2. Okay, but this time around, if the course of actions are more than 2, you use the if then else if statement. Okay, only one alternative is executed at a time. Okay, once an alternative is executed, the next statement to be executed is that following the end if. Okay, so as we said in the sequence control structures, the program runs from the top to the bottom. Okay, so it starts checking the condition from the top to the bottom. Okay, so if the very first one, or the one that is true, it executes its course of action within that particular if statement, and then right after that it moves to the end of the if and run any code after that. Okay, if there is any. So let's take note of that. So also the if then else statement can be called the multi-way or cascaded if statements. Okay, so let's take note of that, and let's look at a structure. Okay, so we have if condition 1 is true, then take action 1. Else if condition 2 is true, then take action 2. If condition 3 is true, then take action 3, so on and so forth. Okay, as many as you have. Okay, depending on the type of program you are writing or the number of conditions you have. Okay, you write them accordingly. Okay, so let's take this as an example. Now this is a grading system for a school, and students are graded A when they get 70 and above. They are graded B when they get 60 to 69. They are graded C when they get 50 to 59, and also 40 to 49 is graded D, and then below 40 is graded F. Okay, so this is one particular program you can implement the if then else if statement in it. Okay, where you want to actually input an exam score, and then the code is going to tell you if the student had A, B, C, D, or F. Okay, so let's see the solution over here. Okay, so first of all, we use the input statement to receive the exam score, and after receiving the exam score, we use the if then else statement. Okay, so we first check that if the exam score is greater than or equal to 70, as we said with the grading system we give. Okay, then we print it's a grade A. Okay, but then if the exam score is not greater than or equal to 70, it moves on to the second else statement. Okay, so else if the exam score is greater than or equal to 60, then it prints the statement in there. Okay, but then if the exam score is not greater than or equal to 60, then that particular action in there is not performed. Okay, then it moves on to the next statement, which is the next if statement, which is else if exam score is greater than or equal to 50, then print exam score is a grade C. Okay, so if that particular condition is true, then it prints it and then moves on to the end if and runs the other codes beneath it. Okay, but then if it is not true and it's false, it continues like that. Okay, so just as I have explained. So basically these are the control structures we'll be discussing today. In our next tutorial, we will talk about the looping control structures, okay, which is the while loop, the for loop, the do while, the repeat until loop. Okay, so stay tuned on this channel, and as I said earlier, all the sessions I'm doing here concerning structured programming has been arranged accordingly. Okay, so if you want to get the understanding better, I will encourage you to start from the beginning if you didn't. Okay, and then try to learn each and every single thing we spoke about here on this channel. And I have also grouped everything concerning the structured programming in a playlist called structured programming for CS. Okay, so if you haven't seen that particular playlist, I'll leave the link to it in the description below so that you get the playlist as well. Okay, stay tuned, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, kindly do so and turn on your notification bell so that you continue to get such wonderful videos like this from the Rich Tech channel. Thank you and have a nice day.